Hola community, it's me Pablo, it's Blender.Today 65. We are in another week of this meeting, this gathering of just checking out what's new in Blender this week over like all kinds of news, because it mainly focuses on development, but there are also community events and things going on around it. And the changes in Blender 2.8, they are coming more like fixes. So I'm gonna cover some of the most important fixes that were done this week. There were a few things that slipped in, mainly just completing what was done at the beginning of the Blender 2.8 project regarding like a tool system, and now we're gonna see some of those. And at the end we have the questions section, like always. So if you have any question, please go to Blender.Today, that's a URL, and check out the Fixes Galore post here, where you can see we can ask questions. Right now there are 13 comments, so leave yours there. If you see a question that you like answer, just give it a little heart icon right here. You have to log in only with your Blender ID, so that's the whole thing. So we're gonna be answering that towards the end of the show, but we might be sooner, because it's not as packed as it was last week. And that's a good thing. So I still have some new things to talk about. So before getting into the actual news, I would like to mention Blender, which is happening in a few weeks. So if you're in the UK, especially if you're in London, there is a Blender.org website where it says the London Blender Day is a meeting. It's a one day of Blender stuff. So if you're around, please come say hi, because I'm gonna be there talking about Spring and Blender 2.8. So join us, and there's some really nice talks there. I can't wait. This is gonna be in 3 weeks, June 22nd. And if you use the promotion code B3D London, like B3D London altogether, you're gonna get 10% discount. So see you there, to see you actually in person, to talk to you, to talk with the community. That's actually pretty nice. When will you come to Europe? And I'm in Europe. I'm in Amsterdam. I live in Amsterdam for like 11 years now. Then not live at the come and go, but Portugal, you should make a Blender conference. And then I've never been to Portugal, so yes, it will be awesome now that 2.8, when 2.8 is out, to actually fly around and talk about Blender and showing it, and meeting new people from the community. That would be pretty nice. So that's all for BlenderLondon.org. You can get more information, and let's get to the actual Blender stuff. So there are a few big things, big changes. Some of them are, they break a little bit of the compatibility if you're on a Mac. So all 5 of you that you're on a Mac, there is this I'm just kidding, it's actually 5 of you on a Mac and 3 of you on Linux. The rest is all on Windows. But hey, there are things for you. There is an performance improvements that were done on this week, on especially for the Viewport. The Viewport on Mac OS is now much more improved. For solving that, though, the minimum required Mac OS version is 10.11. However, recently we announced that the minimum for like the officially supported Mac OS version is 10.12. So what does it mean? That now the minimum is 10.11. So if you're using 10.11 and something doesn't work, it's not really supported, it will try your best to make it work. But now, but until a few days ago, you could still use like 10.9 or 10.10. So now you can't. It's a 10.11 minimum, and then 10.12 onwards. So, but that brings a lot of performance improvements. So yay. What else? Cycles got improved, actually. Yes, this cycles memory usage for instances. In 2.7 there was an optimization made long time ago, actually, where it's more efficient when dealing with instances. However, that wasn't the case in 2.8, and you will see like the memory usage was different. Now that has been fixed, but not only has been fixed in a cycles level, it has been fixed on actual Blender core dependency graph level. So that means that cycles and also Eevee and pretty much everyone can benefit from it. So yay for making things more standard, and actually everybody gets benefits from it. So thanks you everyone for the love on the chat. Let's go to London. Yeah, let's go. Actually, so it's gonna be my second time, but the first time I only spent like a day. So I'm gonna be a tourist like Joey from Friends. You know, like when they go, "Yay, London, baby!" If you watch Friends, you know the reference. Anyway, next is the UI. We always start with the user interface. And here, if you're familiar with the show here, I like to go like from the top, just showing what's new in the user interface, because it's what we are mainly more used to, and more it's more visual, of course. So the UI is frozen since already a couple weeks. What does it mean? That nothing will change in a big way. So if you're making tutorials, or if you're following tutorials, whatever is done from now on, it should be stable until the release of 2.80 and even 2.81. So that gives at least 6 months, well, let's say if Blender 2.8 gets released in 6 weeks, 7-8 weeks maybe. No, it should be within July. It was promised within July, so that would be around 8 weeks. So max. Otherwise, it's we go to jail because we keep breaking our promises. So if that happens, for example, and then we take I don't know, just speculating here, but like 4 months for 2.81, it means that it's gonna be pretty a long way for the tutorials to exist, for documentation, for everything. However, there are a few areas in Blender where they were a bit left behind in terms of implementation. For example, I mean, this changes the UI, but it's so minimal. Like, for example, these widgets for panning, for zooming, for example, they are here since the beginning of I think after the Code Quest last year, so over a year. But these were missing in other areas, such as for example, the image editor didn't have the panning and the zooming, and also if you are, for example, making video editing, where you still have a 2D view for the preview of your whatever you're editing, for example. So you still need to pan and to zoom. So for everywhere where it makes sense, I think the clip editor also has it. Now you'll see these two widgets. So yeah, it's kind of breaking the UI freeze, but it's it's not like people are gonna get lost if they don't see the hands there. But if you're making tutorials, now you can point it out. That is not only in the 3D view, but also in the image, clip, and sequencer. Also, another very small thing, it's the icons here that you see at the bottom, like in the status bar. This area shows when you're holding a modifier, like a Control Shift or like right click, like you always gonna have this section changing to reflect what you can do and what you can't do. So there were a few operators that were not using it yet, and actually some of them are still not using it. So we're on the process of like upgrading them to use, instead of the I don't know if you remember, but in like 2.4 2.4, well, yeah, in 2.4 too, but in 2.7, if you're like in fly mode, for example, you have this all the header taken by this very long list of like you get a little Bible down there to read, and you have to like a manual, and it's a bit too much. So in 2.8, that was also the case until recently, where now, thanks to the Live Elinto, that very nicely converted it into use the status bar system. So very nice addition. And I think there are a few other operators that are still missing. So if you want to help out, and maybe you can try to spot them and go look at the commit log, just to see how it was done, and maybe you can use it as a reference. Maybe. That's so nice. I like to stalk developers every now and then and, and see what they're doing, see what they're like, how are they changes done, and how to like maybe copy that on my code or improve it. And also on the profiles you can see what they're doing. It's very nice. Or even what they're like what you get. I have my user and I check there what's going on, if I get like likes or dislikes on the whatever I'm working on, or like feature request and stuff. So add a cat in Blender. We have a monkey. That should be enough. You can make a monkey from a cat. No, a cat from a monkey. Yes. All right. More updates before I get a bit too distracted. So this issue was around since before the changes in the outliner. So I don't know if you ever noticed, but since always, the panning on the outliner, there was always off. There was always like too much space, and it wasn't really being like the width, it wasn't really being taken into account. So you have this empty space, and if you had stuff that, for example, were parented to each other, and you had a bit too long, then you'll have this weirdness. Yes, that it's been fixed. So if we go to, wait, I have two blenders here. So now in the Blender 2.8, if you well, you're gonna see it. It's hard to show when it was working wrong, but you will see that the panning now only goes all the way till the end of the outliner, where it makes sense, where there is content, and there is no more panning when you don't need it. And it's smart enough to, if you have all the columns set up, it will only work until, it will only pan until there. So it's very nice. Finally, it's been long awaited. At least for me, it was so annoying to pan, and you get also the scroll bar there all the time. So it was very, very annoying. All right, let's go. You can increase the speed. Are you talking about me, or is that music from soft adult videos? Oh, the music in the background. No, actually the music, it's some lo-fi that I enjoy, and I can lower it if you don't like it, but it's the musician is on the description of this video, and on every video, I hope. Otherwise, let me know. Then the stats info now shows more accurate information. I think that's a fix mainly, other than a than something that has changed in the UI. But let's go to actual interaction, like UX, user experience improvements. So the this one, I don't know if you have been using the scrubbing area, the scrub area down here. This one, the one that shows the frames, and that you can just drag and drop. So I don't know if you noticed the drag and drop, sorry, drag and seek around. I don't know if you noticed, but there was an issue that if you were like moving this around up and down, because of the continuous grab feature in Blender. What is continuous grab? Continuous grab is when you it's a feature that it's enabled by default, and it makes it so that when you're, for example, moving something, or like when you're changing a value on a slider, so like this slider, for example, it makes it so that when I reach the end of the edge of the editor, it's like the cursor goes all the way to the right, and then so when you move it to the end, you see the cursor is here, and then if I move it, it will show up on the other side. So that allows me to continue moving, and it's like a teleports to the other side. And that's amazing. That's really great, because it means that if you're, for example, changing a value of your of a slider, it means that you can internally, it goes inside and then goes out. So it's pretty handy. However, that meant that if you were scrubbing in this area and then you will move the mouse up and down, the mouse will be like going up and going to the appearing like a ring. So it was like a carousel of your cursor, and it was very confusing. So now, thanks to this little improvement well, major improvement, but looks small, by a developer from the community, actually, George Bogiatsis. Thank you very much for this. He made it so that when you are using continuous grab, it can take an axis as the operator, as an operator argument. So it means that, for example, for this dragging, you can make it so only affects the left and right. So if you go to the edge of the screen, it will continue going. But if you go up and down, it doesn't, it's ignored. So very nice. Thank you, George, for this and many other fixes that you're doing lately. So thank you very much. More, since we're here in the timeline or in any animation editor, there has been improvements in this area, meaning that, for example, if you have a bunch of markers and you want to select them, like you can now box select markers inside this area. You can also click anywhere in the marker area to deselect. So it's very consistent with the rest. Very nice. This has been implemented recently by our boy Jack Luke. It's amazing. It's yeah, it means now that for selecting though, you have to be a bit more precise. So when you click on it on the marker, you have to like really click on it, because it means that any other area is going to be try to be detected to see if you're actually clicking and dragging or not. So very nice. Let's move a bit more. Oh, okay, gizmos. So if you're a right-click selector, if you're a superior right-click, sorry, I'm kidding. I need tea. I'm drinking tea. If you're a right-click selector, then this is not for you. You're doing great. You're doing great in life. Just continue how you're doing. However, if you're a left-click select, or if you're using Blender by default, this fix is gonna help you not lose your mind when you're using gizmos, because now, from now, since a few days, the clicking on the gizmos, it's not you can basically clicking on the gizmos. If you just click on it, then it will be taken as a selection. So you can click and it will select the object behind. So if you're what does it mean that if you right click select, it doesn't this doesn't affect you? Because in right click select, the selection and the action is split. So if you use right click, you're always gonna select, and if you left click, you're always gonna drag the manipulator, the gizmo. So for this though, there has been a few changes overall in Blender, so you can actually click, and also the gizmo transform, it's only activated on click and drag. So you always have to like click and drag, which is usually what you do, right? So if you click, it's taken as a select, and then if you click and drag, it's taken as a transform. So together with this, let's see who's right click and see who this middle click select. Oh, there, that's most powerful one. What time is the Spanish one? The Spanish live stream is in 1 hour. 1 hour after this video ends. So yeah, in 1.5 hours. All right, let's continue, because for this, speaking of the click and drag, there was an issue with the click drag threshold that happens when you, like, for example, if you, what is a drag, right? What is considered a drag? It's when you click and move your mouse more than a few pixels. So the issue is though that when you're using the pen, that can happen by mistake, where you can click, you're more prone to just like click, drag and move by mistake, even by a little threshold. So for that, Campbell split this setting into 2 settings. So in the user preferences, you can now tweak under input, you can have all kinds of the drag thresholds. You can have it for mouse and for tablets. So that means that for tablet it's a bigger threshold, so it means that you can, by mistake, when you're trying to select things, if you move it like less than 10 pixels, which is default, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be like consider a click. and you will have to move it more than 10 pixels, which is usually what happens. Like if I'm using the pen here, and you can see that usually you do it more than 10 pixels. If it bothers you, you can always change it in the user preferences. And for the mouse, it's 3 pixels, so it means that if I click and move more than 3 pixels, that's when the motion is going to start, because usually you're a bit more of you do a bit more precision work there. All right, moving on. Speaking of gizmos, the gizmo for moving here on the window, this one was failing in paint mode, so now that has been fixed. So this is just a fix, and now I'm gonna mention more fixes than actual new features, because we should be moving towards fixing stuff. So this could be considered a fix. It's a big one by Lucas Stockner. The cycle's denoiser has been improved to avoid halos around bright edges. So if you have some edges of your mesh that there's like super bright, too much, then the denoiser can make like a halo, can get crazy, and could get crazy before in the past, not anymore thanks to this patch of Lucas Stockner. So if you had like weird halos around bright edges by using denoiser, it should be fixed. A halo fix, yay, halo fix. All right, let's continue. Let's move to keymap changes, fixes mainly. So the sequencer, now from the sequencer you can, well, from any animation editor basically, you can specify the frame start and frame end. So you can do like a control end and control home to specify the start and the end. And this will also work on any other animation editor. So for example, if you're in the let's say in the animation here in the dope sheet, you also, oops, oh, I press Control F12. That is rendering the animation. All right, here. So it's Control End and Control Start is gonna set your start and end frame. It used to be E and S in 2.7. Speaking of 2.7, that is a nice segue. The control up and down has been added back to the 2.7 keymap. So if you not familiar with what that is, it's for those that don't like change or want to take it an easier step into 2.8. You can choose to have the keymaps behave like in Blender 2.7. And there was one that was missing. One of the few shortcuts that was missing is control up and down for moving, for expanding the window, which now is control space in 2.8. Then, all right, let's move to more fixes. So these are a bunch of Eevee fixes, so I'm not gonna show much, but just good to, I picked a few here from, this is my list, by the way, for today. I picked a few that I saw on the commit logs that are important, I think. For example, the anti-aliased, yeah, there was an aliasing problem, and I like this one because it's also contributed by the community, by Adam Nidal. So he has fixed the anti-aliasing on the light profs in Eevee. So if you had some blotchy reflections, then now this should be fixed with this new. So you can see here, I think it's pretty clear the difference. You can see it better here in this one. You can see how in the left is without, and then on the right is with the fix. It's much more smoother. And if you increase the filter quality, it's also gonna be like super perfect smooth. By default, the filter quality was a bit too low, so that was also increased to 3.0. So it should give by default, with the default settings, a bit more a bit nicer reflections in Eevee. Then there was plenty of crashes. There were like so many crashes fixed this week, from dependency graph, from cycles, from Eevee, from outliner, from everywhere. But there was one when showing the transparent film in Eevee that apparently a lot of people were having. Then the alpha of the render objects was also kind of weird when using clip materials. The reflections also were not visible on materials that had alpha type clip. I'm just mentioning ones, so maybe if you're using Eevee and you know what I'm talking about, you are familiar. If you didn't see reflections on your materials when you were using alpha clip, then now has been fixed. Then if you're using a world, if you're tweaking your world shader stuff settings and you couldn't find the emission node in the world nodes, then that has been fixed. That also is a big one, that if you're looking for a node that you can't find it, don't always assume that it's not supported. Maybe it wasn't added, like in this case, by mistake. And also there was a crash if you were using a subsurface scattering node, but it wasn't connected. So that's something that maybe can lead, maybe you do it by mistake, you're just like tweaking the settings and it will crash. This would fix it. So like this, there are many other fixes all over the place. So yes, let's continue. Talking about the weather. Gee, I'm that boring. Talking about the weather is like 50 degrees. I hope it's not Celsius. Okay. Am I that boring? It's fixes should be exciting. So, all right, more fixes. The snapping. Snapping now also works on curved objects that have modifiers. So snapping, if you had issues with snapping on curved objects, then that has been fixed. Then sculpt mode drawing with modifiers was still wrong in some cases. So if you were doing sculpting with like the drawing of the sculpts and you had a bunch of modifiers in and it was wrong, that should be fixed in the most cases. So go check it out again. Then I'm just going through the fixes. I'm a few more and I go to the questions, just because I think these ones are a big one to mention. The empties, when you're using empties as bone shapes in your amateurs, in your rigs, these would not show. There was a bug, so now that has been fixed. The markers, the tracking markers in the viewport were not selectable. That's also fixed. Some improvements in the sequencer. Oh, last week I was showing a feature which also when I was using it looked a bit weird. So for example, set smooth. So the let's see. So last week I think I showed the edit normals operator, and it happened that I was showing it with the new shortcut, which is Alt N and rotate, and I remember clicking on it and nothing was happening. Didn't know how to go to the settings and then tweak it, but now if you click on rotate, it should be interactive. So the moment you start like actually clicking around, you click on rotate, then you can move and rotate. It's interactive now. Before it was interactive, just what's a bug in the code, the menu. What else? The FBX and GLTF and Colada, like those big import and export add-ons, have tons of fixes. So go check them out. If you also had issues in the past, download the latest Blender 2.80 beta and try if it's happening again. And last but not least, there is this huge improvement in painting performance on Windows. With many cores, it's much improved. So if you had a bunch of cores on your computer, like i7, i9, or a Threadripper on Windows, then these should be fixed. There was a bottleneck that it now got fixed. So the more cores you have, it's going to be faster when painting with the texture painting on Windows. And that it's all. I think that's all. Yeah, oh, B-surfaces. That add-on also had an issue with creating from B-surfaces from curves. If you are familiar with that add-on, that has been fixed. And that's all for what I have ready. And now there are 26 comments. That's not too bad. Let's see if I can get through it. All right. Facundo de la Rosa. Hi, Pablo. I have one question and one suggestion. Will Animation 2020 include muscle simulation? Please change the hotkeys of the brushes in sculpt mode. Hey, that's two questions and a request. No, sorry. Okay, so the first question. Will Animation 2020 include muscle simulation? That's not really plan it yet, but I wouldn't leave it outside of the equation, because with everything nodes project, it means that modifiers will gonna be notified, so that gives a lot more freedom to build this kind of systems. Also, if there is any kind of like procedural modeling, also gets in that area-ish. So I wouldn't discard it. It's not completely planned right now, but I wouldn't discard it at all. All right, is everything okay here in the chat? More questions are bad? No, it's not bad actually. It's pretty good. It's good. Oh, and the second question from Facundo was like, please change the hotkeys of the brushes in sculpt mode. You have to press a lot of keys just to change the active brush. In 279 it was way easier. 279, what was it? With numbers, right? Please, the feedback, there is a dedicated here dev talk section in the forums here, user feedback, where you can discuss this kind of things. Also, there is the paper cuts. So if there is something that is wrong, specifically that is wrong, or is a paper cut, something that is annoying, you can now create in this section, you can create new threads and get the discussion going, just to see how would be the best way to improve it. But this kind of feedback it's super important, having the speed of 2.7 be back in the workflow in 2.8. But remember that 2.8 is also the workflow release where some shortcuts have been removed for you to put your own and new ones, so that to even speed up your workflow even more. But in this case, if there are shortcuts in 2.8 that are slower than 2.7, then we should work on that. Next question by Sick Monkey Dab. Hey Pablo, does Francesco have any plans to make tutorials for Flamenco or Attract? It would be pleased to have such info, from setting up a project to setting up the render network. Or should we wait till the asset manager is implemented? No, I wouldn't wait for that. But if you're not familiar with what the Sick Monkey is talking about, Francesco in the past, Blender, he made a few video tutorials explaining like the overview of how Blender Flamenco works, which is the render manager that we use for rendering the agent, Caminandes, and Spring Open Movie project. And we've been using it for many projects now, and now it's being greatly improved, and we should give another training. But I think this training so far should be quite even though it's a few years old, from July, almost 2 years, the content itself hasn't changed much. There are new features though, but maybe we could if more people are asking for it. Actually, we have a bunch of hearts. Let's give it another one. We can get to run it to make something new, because Attract and Flamenco are really not that hard to be set up. Attract is the tracking. You also made a video about it. Attract and Flamenco are both open source software that allow you to track your productions, and they are a service provided by Blender Cloud. So the code is open source, but the service is like the ready server setup. It's provided by Blender Cloud. You can set up your own at home. It takes a bit of knowledge to do it. It's not like a one-click install, but it's you can do it. So the way it works, you connect your Blender sequencer. You connect your strips. You submit the shot to Attract, to the web. So basically, you can connect. You can have your whole movie in the video sequencer, and then show the shots in here in the web. So you can share it, you can assign tasks, you can assign like a due date and share it with other people online, with your team online. All right, next question, Andreas. Hey Pablo, I wish the unit system, the units for dimension inputs were back as they were in 2.79. The input fields respected the setting of the unit scale value. So when the unit scale was 0.01 and I entered 1 into a dimension, it was interpreted as 1 centimeter. Now it's always 1 meter, no matter what. If I set the length to centimeters instead of adaptive, everything is interpreted as centimeters. But it gets ugly when I use meters and everything gets converted into centimeters. In 279, I was able to mix that while having centimeters. Long story short, it would be great to have a specified unit denomination for when adaptive is selected. Yeah, that sounds like a paper cut, like adaptive. So yeah, maybe please leave this as a suggestion in the user feedback here, or maybe on the paper cut even, because it's maybe it was left over like an oversight when the adaptive feature was implemented by Jack Luke, and we know how productive he is, so maybe that could be fit into, because it looks like an unfinished thing of 2.8, so it could be slipped in as a improvement of the current, even though the feature freeze, you know. All right. Why do you have 1 million vertices? Give it a thumbs up, Pablo. Thumbs up. Oh yeah, I've been giving thumbs up to everything here. All right. Hi Pablo, I wanted to thank you for all your work to communicate Blender to the master. Thank you, sir. It's a hard work, but it's paying off. We see actually the amount of viewers and everybody online hasn't increased since I was doing it in a different channel, but the people getting in touch and saying that thank you for making it, even people from big studios, are like it's insane how this works. So thank you very much for tuning, and we're gonna continue making this even after 2.8. There's life after 2.8. Even the Summer of Code, maybe I can do one episode direct only about Summer of Code improvements, branches that are not Summer of Code but are still interesting, like the Sculpt branch. There are ideas for future Blender Todays. I have a question. Right now, when you transform anything in Blender, the user has to search somewhere in the corner of Blender to read the numbers. This is really unintuitive. Will this kind of info be over the widget itself? And this way the user eyes will always be. Yes, actually this has been not implemented, but it has been proposed in the past. So yeah, this thing, it should either be here, that's one thing, or also sometimes you don't always have a widget even when you're transforming, so you need some kind of transformation, because when you press G for moving, where is that information going to be shown up? Right now it's shown up here in the corner, which is far from ideal. It's mainly a leftover, I would say, from 2.7 era, where you have the numbers in the header. So now the header is on the top, so this hasn't really changed much. It's not a trivial thing to fix, but there are designs already, and the idea basically is to have those numbers show up here, up here in the center, in the top of the viewport, so they are closer to where the user is looking at. Maybe it could be an exception that for these kind of widgets we have the values here, and maybe for other kind of operations we show them in the top, maybe, because we already have that kind of behavior. If you're, for example, doing anything with brushes, if you do Shift F, or you change the size of the, well, not the size of the brush, but like the strength, you will see that it shows in the center of the brush. So with the concept is already there in a way. But thank you for it. I'm gonna upvote it, and yes, go back to here. Can the quick effect in Blender get automatic node update on the fire? Can the quick effect in Blender get automatic node update? The quick effect smoke and fire need the Blender render engine to render the images. And Eevee cannot do it. We called it quick effect when it's too slow. Like in 279 it will take 10 seconds. In 2.8 it takes 1-2 minutes. Get automatic node update on the fire. Hard to see, but if it's slow, then it's just a matter of fixing it. I think the quick effect is a Python script, basically an operator that just runs a bunch of operators. It's like a macro, so it should be it's easy-ish to fix. Just maybe can be reported as a bug. I mean, if it's way too slow, then maybe there's something wrong in it. Let's see. Play some Fortnite. No, Fortnite, I never played that. I never even seen a gameplay. I only seen the dances. And I don't know if it's available for Linux, so I only play Linux games. Yeah, there are Linux games, and there is also Proton by Steam, so that runs pretty much anything. It's a branch of Wine, the emulator. Anyway, not emulator, the layer. Next question is just random. Is there a way to sort of paint weight density onto material objects? Since, as you know, in the real world, a hammerhead made of metal is far heavier than the handle made of wood, a fact that deeply affects physics. Is there also a way to simulate plastic deformation? So it's two questions. Plastic deformation. Plastic deformation, this is interesting. No, I don't that I know. Can MantaFlow do that kind of stuff? And then the weight density. Well, that you just change the mass of the object, I think. When doing physics, I would think so. Of your body physics. Sinog, hey Pablo. We lost some of the 2.79 settings, so I made a proposal to make them better for the 3D gizmos. What? We lost a few of the settings. For the size, handle size, and hotspot. Okay. Yeah, I completely missed this one, but if we lost the settings, then maybe you should give it as feedback. Just try to get more like the discussion going here, if it's okay, and then write more of a proposal here in the dev talk. Just maybe it was just not brought in from 2.7. Next question is from Frostcrack Studio. How can I add normal maps and textures to a model without the node system? The node system is too slow in Blender 2.8. That's two questions. Like, how can I add a normal maps and textures to a model without the node system? You well, you can if you really want to. It's way simpler to use a node system, to use a node interface, but you kinda can if you like want to add a normal map here to the normal. You can click on it and then go through this interface, which is far from ideal, but if you really want it, you can basically. You just load as an info. It's a texture, it's an image, texture coordinates. So basically, yeah, just try to find the data here. I can't find it now, but basically, yeah, you give it something with an input, and the input you would use the bump, and then the bump you use as a strength. You can use this is the most terrible interface, but you can, if you really want to, image texture, and then you click, and then you have the texture, and then you load your texture. So can, but I just use the node system. I think it's just, oh, by the way, in the node system you can just use if you find it too slow, just go to, like, when you're adding them, just right click, add to your quick favorites. So if you're using image textures a lot, add to quick favorites, and then when you press Q, it's gonna be here. So you can add a whole bunch of nodes and just work even faster than with the other way. And use the node wrangler add-on. All right. Alon, hi Pablo. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm gonna blush. Will it be possible to fix the annoying issue with the Blender preferences window and position? Whenever it is resized or move around after closing or reopen, it will reset to this tiny box on the top left again. I run into this so many times because when working on developing or showing things, every time I call it, it appears in the top left. So I hope there are ways to fix that. I don't know if that's the case with the renders, like when you press F12, it also appears in the top left. I am maybe, yeah, it should be a paper cut, then we can, that should be fixed. It's so annoying that appears in the top left. Should appear in the center. Or remember, yeah, the last position, like other windows. Yes, I am with you here. Not because of the nice thing you said also, but this issue is so annoying. Eevee often needs to be forced to update when working with shader nodes. By forced, I mean you have to do something like move the camera or something to update. This, all these update issues are part of the big change that got 2.8, which is the dependency graph, where every operation has to be tagged to be updated. It's something that has to be done, like it was just part of the new implementation. So there's no like one fix for everything. It has to be on a case-by-case basis. If you find these missing updates, get the latest Blender first. Try it, because these fixes happen all the time, and if it still happens, make a simple case, describe it step by step, and report the bug. So for reporting a bug, remember you have to go from the help menu, report the bug. Why do I say it has to? Because in the form it will pre-fill it with your hardware settings. So it will say like I have a GeForce and I have a Linux with Ubuntu 64-bit. So it's all information about your operating system and the version that you're using in Blender. So it's no personal information being sent here. It's not even sent only until you create a new task. But yeah, just use the help menu because it's much more efficient. All right, next question. Alimo 9080. Hey Pablo, say on the modifier stack and you hold left mouse on an arrow and drag down. When you drag down, it collapses all the open modifiers. Will that feature be added in the outliner? When you drag down, okay, so what you mean is that this very nice option that I don't know if other softwares have, but they should because it's very nice. It's that the for example, when there are settings in a column like all aligned, for example all these boxes, you can just click and then drag down and it will change all of the settings at once. And this works all over the place. It works even like he was mentioning or she was mentioning, I didn't check, but it's in the modifiers. For example, if you have a bunch of modifiers, you can basically just like click on a button, in this case this one, but any button works, and just like collapse them all, like click, drag down. And this setting works in the outliner, works pretty much everywhere except these buttons. So maybe that is a nice paper cut to add. So please make it into a nice little paper cut here in Blender development and user feedback, or paper cuts here, paper cuts. Maybe that's not a lot of work to do, and it's an easy thing that can be done here before the before 2.80. Alrighty, let's Arturo Leone. I don't know why I said it like in Italian. Arturo Leone. Hi Pablo, love the show. Thank you. Q question: in Eevee, is the object motion blur going to be implemented in 2.80 or is it going to slip into 2.81 or later? No new features for 2.80. The goal is to be as stable as possible, so no. Object motion blur, there is object motion blur already, but not the formation motion blur. So the cameras and the objects, if you have an so if you have a cube going from one side to the other side, it should have motion blur. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if the best thing is to try to show it here, but yeah, if you're playing with it's an Eevee thing, so you should have the motion blur. Well, I don't even showing it, but it should be. Otherwise, I am full of wrong assumptions, to say the least. But camera motion blur should be there. So if you're moving with the camera, then it should be there. So if you're moving up, let's see, and then you go here and then you go down, should be motion blur. So Ah, yeah, it is motion blur. I don't know if you get to see it, but yes, it is. It was just wasn't moving fast enough. So yeah, it is. Next question. John, hi Pablo. Is there a way to add a custom Python operator to the quick favorite menu without the whole process of building an add-on? Thanks for all you do. Thank you. No, there is no, like, if you want to add a custom Python operation, then you need to make an operator. So you don't really need an add-on for making operators. Operators are one thing and add-ons are completely different thing. Not completely. Add-on is just like a little house to give it to that operator. But you can basically, in the scripting, you have the templates where you can create, you have the operators, like operator simple. So this operator simple, for example, you just register it on load, or you can run it and then it got registered. So now this would be called simple object operator. So it's simple object operator. So it is done, but how to access that? That's a very good question. How to assign it to the... Is it in the history? No, because in the history we can't add things to... Oh, well, we can actually. So interesting. So if I run the script and then I run the... Okay, now I'm just playing with it, but basically the script, right click, add to quick favorites, and then yeah, you can. Interesting. All right. Sorry for the sidetracking, but you can in a way, but yeah, that's the only way for now. However, I highly recommend to make your own add-ons. Really, like even if like you don't have to make an add-on to put it in them, like sell it or like whatever. Add-ons are awesome for keeping your own changes in Blender and being able to update Blender without like changing the code underneath. That's how my add-ons started. I just want things that I don't want to touch in the Blender code, and I add them via add-ons. And then I share it online because people seem to like some of the settings. So yes. Next question, Vladimir. Hi Pablo, I use the lasso tool in Photoshop and I can undo point by point. Is it possible to the knife tool with Blender? No, not possible at the moment. Fabian Sasueta. Actually, is there a possibility to have a separate software dedicated only to viewing models running on the Eevee engine, similar to how Sketchfab does it? It would be nice to have effects such as chromatic aberration, film grain, or blah blah. Is there a possibility to have a separate software? Yeah, well, you can fork Blender, because Eevee is Blender basically. It's not an external render engine like Cycles, for example. It's not a standalone. It's Blender. So you can fork Blender and remove everything, and then you have a player. But it's kind of an overkill. Maybe no, it's just overkill. So hey, JD Eddie, love the work you guys are doing. Is the interactive axis going to be working in paint modes again? If you go to paint sculpt, you're not able to rotate the viewport with the on-screen widget. Oh, that's what we fixed today. So if you're, I just showed it before. So basically, if you go to like texture paint, and then you can rotate the view even here. So nice. I fixed that. I was done before this. So if you don't have it in your latest Blender, just wait until the build gets updated. Another question. Hi Paolo, thanks for all the work you put into this broadcast every week. Thank you. My question: are the current bugs with the physics system going to be fixed before the release? The critical ones, the ones that are like high priority. Supposedly everything that works in 2.79 should work in 2.80. Yes, mainly. But currently there are many bugs with the smoke and particle system that didn't exist in 2.79. Okay, then I wouldn't expect them if the bugs were not... Wait, so there were no bugs in 2.79, but there are bugs in the same thing in 2.8, then we can assume yes. However, if it involves a deep issue in the physics system, then I wouldn't keep my hopes really high, because we have something awesome coming up, which is the flip based manta flow. So that is going to basically replace the system we have now. And with that in mind, it will solve a lot of issues. Maybe bring new ones, but solve a lot of issues. Physics, you know, physics. Next question. Blender.Today asks, just a question. Why are you using distracting music in the background? So you should not be offending. Well, I'm not putting it just to mess with you guys. So you can tell me if you don't if you don't like it, and I will put it down. I find it relaxing, especially because I'm in a small office here, and then you could hear like the rest. But just let me know. Hey, he likes the music. Thank you, Robert. Come to Dutch Comic Con Amsterdam, Pablo. Wait, there is a Dutch Comic Con in Amsterdam? I will love it. Yeah. Okay, thank you for the feedback. No, apparently music is fine. Sorry if you don't like it. I just barely hear it. Yeah, that's the whole point, that it shouldn't be. I try to pick the most quiet and easy to listen. Next question by Noel Village. What's going on to be more or less the minimum amount of bugs in the tracker to consider? The more or less minimum amount of bugs in the tracker, 2.80. And there's a lot of work to tackle, over 1,300 reports. Well, remember, some of them are very old. Some of them are issues that are not even an issue, maybe shortcuts that was missing, and then you have to explain, no, because in 2.8 the shortcuts that changed, and there's a lot of those 1,300 that are not even that important, or they are not even bugs. That being said, there is an effort from last week until the end release of 2.80. It's not about a number of bugs, it's about the important ones being fixed. So 2.80 should be super stable, right? Should be as stable as possible, but still is the first release of a series. So the focus now is on high priority bugs. High priority is crashes, completely making your life impossible kind of bugs. So that's a main focus. You will see like there is the bug reports in Blender, in developer.blender.org. You'll find that the bugs have, well, not here, but the bugs in Blender, because I have it's just here. If you go when you're not logged in, because I have tweaked my list, you will find here that you can filter them by high priority. The high priority are the ones that are marked as like, okay, it has to be fixed, and in this case there's only 23 so far right now as this moment. So yeah, multi-window measure crash, for example, smoke crash. So all this undo crash, all these ones are like the high priority ones. Next, Fabiana asks, this isn't a question, so I want to congratulate you. Oh, thank you. And everybody over there at Blender for doing such a marvelous job with this awesome software. Big fan of the stream and never miss out. Saludos desde Mexico. Gracias, Fabian. Appreciate it. Thank you for the nice wishes. And it's nice to have this feedback from you people, and to have this live Q&A. I have I changed the setting in this live stream, by the way, to try to have this the chat a bit more interactive. I hope everything went fine, and it's 6 o'clock here, so I am overtime already. But since it's in the internet, right? We have time, so let's do 5 more questions to try and address everyone's. All right, so OMG Disney asks, do the improvements on the Collada exporter mean we don't need to use the add-on from the Godot folks to be able to import? Actually, there was a fix from the that was preventing the Godot exporter to work properly, or importer to work properly. So there is a fix there, so you should check it out. The Dragon, what do you think about B4Artist? B4Artist is, if I'm not wrong, is a fork of Blender that changes the interface for making it more friendly. I I've never had a big issue with Blender itself being not friendly. There are things that you have to get used to it, but I started, my first software was Blender, so I never ran into these issues. However, I know that a lot of people like the friendliness of the. There is also Blender Pro, which is like it's an application template that was added some time ago, and I don't know if it's still under development. Apparently, it is, and so yeah, there is Blender Pro. There is V for Artists. I don't recommend to use them because the amount of documentation and tutorials available for Blender as it is compared to those available for Artists or Blender Pro, it's, you can't even compare. Like, everybody uses Blender by default almost, and with a bunch of add-ons, people are used to use add-ons, but still it's the same Blender. So anything that it's added to Blender, like any new feature, then it will get documentation and support immediately. Also, if you're using a heavily changed version of Blender like Before Artists or Blender Pro, and you run into an issue, you depend on the developers working there to fix it instead of the whole Blender community. Maybe if the fix is internally within Blender, like in the Blender code, then that can be reported, of course. But if it's something specific to the way that one works, it's not trying to take credit. It's amazing what they're doing, and it's good that it's trying to bring a free and open source software to more people. That's amazing that they're doing it. However, it has its up and downs, right? The cons that you don't get as much support as you do with the Blender that thousands of people download every day from Blender.org. Thousands, yeah. There is like 15,000 times Blender gets downloaded from Blender.org every day. So yeah, without even counting the builder builds. All right, so that was question maybe 4. Yes, number 3. Slug Nugget: is there a way to force update bone constraints to every frame when exporting or baking skeletal animation? There is no way that I know, unless you do with a Python script. With a Python script, you can use handlers. So if you have handler frame change, I think it's called, application handlers frame change, yeah. So you can add here on frame change pre. You can see the list in here. Wait, where is it? Let's start a new Blender. It's way faster usually. All right, so go to scripting, and here in the terminal you will type ppy.app.handlers, and then you have all the handlers, which are like the events that happen at some point. You can for example, when you save, when you render, before the render, when you change a frame, before you change the frame, and after you change the frame. So in these operations, you can hook in like operations, like anything. And that's what I would use for pushing these kind of things, like updates or like doing crazy stuff. For example, I was using the render pre handler back in the days when we didn't have simplify. There was a simplify setting when it was only for the viewport, and we didn't have it for the render. So I made an add-on that it will basically render pre, will like disable simplify, render, and then put simplify back. All right, that was question number 3. Number 2, Manolo Bango. Hola, Pablo. Here are a few suggestions. That is, I'm gonna skip this one, not because of the suggestions, but it's a bit too long and it's not like a real one question. So next one, come run animation. Hey, can we have the noise on baking? We're suffering from noise in baked textures. I don't know the limitations of the noise system in that regard, so I can't even say it. And hey, we reached the end actually. Bjorn, hey Pablo, looking forward to your show every week, thank you. Are there any reason why dynamic paint is not fixed, although the cache problems are reported repeatedly? What? Dynamic paint is not fixed? any reason. The priorities, I guess, when you have 2 or more canvases, only one of them is baked with one canvas. Have you, well, if it's even reported already and many times in the last month and they're not being fixed, it's probably not an easy one, like hey, was this thing not on? So there is maybe, like, sometimes developers also wait for multiple reports, not wait, but like if there's something that is not very clear and you just like try to tackle the other priority bugs, then maybe someone else reported about something about the same level than this bug on dynamic paint, then they get merged, you get more information, and the more information you can gather about this specific issue, then that's how you can tackle a bit more easily, because what is wrong in one area can affect many other areas. So yes, this if this has been reported many times, don't worry, the developers are aware of it. So let's we're understaffed, yeah, because this is, I reported in mid-April, which is like 1.5 months ago, 6 weeks ago, and it's not even triaged yet. So yes, we Blender needs more support, and as always, there is the little advertisement. There was only already 2,300 people supporting the developers. So when we get to 10 the developers, then that's when we can start talking. So consider joining. You can do it even for as little as 5 per month, and it's a community effort, because yeah, there are corporate like studios that are like helping out with like more per month, like in this case Lena Market or Ubuntu, Google, Intel. But there, if you see, this is a corporate, and the majority of the money comes from individuals like you and me and everybody that helps out. So thank you very much for that. I hope you are you're happy with how this show went. I took a bit too much from what I expected to have in this show, but I was actually expecting not having a lot to talk about. The next week it's holidays here, so we're gonna have to skip that one and see how we get together. Then we can gather more information. There is also the Summer of Code activities going on. There is daily builds of the Summer of Code projects, so you can already start playing in Graphical and the Blender community website, where you can have like the outliner branch. So if you want to try the new outliner improvements, you can already. 23 minutes ago was updated. Look at the amazing community that we have. This is awesome. So 20 minutes ago, the outliner branch has been improved. So if you're on Windows here, you just click download, you try the new things in the outliner, and it's just, I don't know, it's isn't it awesome? Open source, like you can actually do this. Just try a new Blender. Yeah, what happened? Oh no, I'm gonna try some sculpting. Bam, I'm gonna get it. Oh, it's a new Blender. And then you got all the blenders that you can try. It's insane. Even the Manta Flow for like physics, sculpting, adaptive sampling, so you can render with less samples. Just awesome. Just awesome. All right, so it's been a while. Thank you everyone for staying until the end. I will go with style, if we can call it that way. Let's see. Are you wearing headphones? If the music was a bit too low, then this I will try my best to not be low. And it's the same music video as always. So if you're wearing headphones, watch out, because in 5, 4, 3. There. Thank you everyone for tuning in another week of Blender Today. I will see you again next time. It's not next week, it's a holiday in the Netherlands, so I will see you next time at the same place and same time. So tune in, blend away, and ciao.